Good morning. This is Mission Control Houston live from the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where teams are monitoring the final approach for Northrop Grumman's Cygnus cargo vehicle, delivering about 7,800 pounds of research, crew supplies, and hardware to the International Space Station. Leading teams here in Mission Control Houston is Flight Director Pooja Jesarani. She'll be leading the teams here in Mission Control and communicating and working hand in hand with Northrop Grumman's team in Dulles, Virginia. Northrop Grumman's mission director, Paul Brower, is monitoring the teams and controlling in the Northrop Grumman's flight control room in Dulles, Virginia. We'll be working hand in hand with him while we monitor Cygnus's approach this morning. There's going to be two milestones that Cygnus is going to pass today. Cygnus is currently approaching what's called the 250-meter hold point. This is one of the hold points just outside the keep-out sphere, a sphere around the space station, and one of the milestones designed into Cygnus's approach. Once Cygnus reaches the 250-meter hold, teams will run a series of checks and go-no-go polls from flight controllers before Cygnus departs that 250-meter hold for the next milestone, which will be the 30-meter hold point. That'll be the last milestone to make sure all systems are a go before Cygnus gets captured 10 to 12 meters from the International Space Station.
This range reaches 1,000 meters.
When Cygnus arrives to the capture point this morning, NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy will capture the spacecraft with the station's robotic arm, backed by Ivan Wagner of Roscosmos. Following that, the controls of the robotic arm will be handed over to the robotics officer on the ground, who will then bring Cygnus closer into the station for installation later this morning. This cargo resupply mission started 3 days ago when Cygnus launched atop an Antares 230 rocket Friday, October 2nd at 8:16 p.m. Central from Pad 0A at NASA's Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. At the time of launch, the International Space Station was flying 252 statute miles above the southern Indian Ocean. About 2.5 hours later, solar arrays were deployed and Cygnus continued its journey to the International Space Station. Since then, Cygnus has performed a series of rendezvous burns to fine-tune its path to the International Space Station, where it will arrive this morning around 4:20 a.m. Central Time.
Attitude nominal.
МКС ЦУПа Москвы в канале СГ-1 для Анатолия.
Station Moscow, space to ground 1 for Anatoly regarding PRK.
Station Houston on Space Ground 2. Cygnus range is 1,000 meters. Monitor long-range approach per step 1 and 1.102. Cygnus approach and retreat monitoring.
Copy. Step 1, 1.102. Houston Station, Tally Ho.
Copy that. Tally ho.
You're now seeing a live view of Cygnus as it approaches that 250 250-meter hold point this morning. Again, you are now getting a view of Cygnus as it approaches that 250-meter hold. Currently, Cygnus is about 1,000 meters away from the International Space Station. This resupply mission is delivering about 7,758 pounds of science, research, crew supplies, and vehicle hardware to the International Space Station this morning. Of that 7,000, almost 800 pounds of cargo, there's about 2,683 pounds of science investigations. One of those science investigations is the Sapphire 5 investigation. Understanding how fire spreads in space is vital to developing flame-resistant materials and fire prevention measures, but it's difficult to perform flame growth and prevention experiments aboard a spacecraft. The Sapphire 5 investigation used the Cygnus resupply vehicle after it leaves the space station to examine fire growth in different materials and environmental conditions. It also demonstrates fire detection, monitoring, and post-fire cleanup capabilities. Currently on board the station, from the left, is NASA astronaut and station commander Chris Cassidy at the controls of the Canadarm2 robotic arm for capture this morning, and Roscosmos cosmonauts, the flight engineers Anatoly Ivanishin and Ivan Wagner. Again, we're standing by as Cygnus approaches the 250-meter hold point on its way to the International Space Station. The range and rate we're getting now is decreasing as expected when approaching the hold point. Once we reach the hold point at 250 meters, Cygnus will maintain the altitude as teams run a series of checks before departing again to the next milestone. We are currently about 4 minutes away from the before Cygnus reaches the 250-meter hold point. The crew will then use the space station's robotic. We are currently awaiting Cygnus to reach the 250-meter hold point this morning on its way to the International Space Station. Once that spot is reached at 250 meters, we'll then look for the milestone for 30-meter hold, where we'll do a series of checks to verify that Cygnus is a go for capture this morning. We are now in a short signal handover period between satellites, but communication should be back shortly. You have a current view of the Dulles, Virginia, Northrop Grumman Mission Control Center. Here, ground controllers will be controlling Cygnus until we have joint operations here with Mission Control Houston. Visiting Vehicle Officer Thomas Castleberry will be communicating directly with Northrop Grumman's flight controllers in Dulles, Virginia, relaying vehicle status and updates back to the teams here in Mission Control Houston. And Northrop Grumman's mission director, Paul Brower, is monitoring the teams and controllers in the Northrop Grumman flight control centers in Dulles, Virginia. Here's a live look at Cygnus on its way to the International Space Station, now sitting at just under 300 meters away from the International Space Station for an on-time capture around 4:20 a.m. Central Time.
Station Houston on Space Ground 2 for the RPRO.
Right.
Hey, Chris, we were wondering if you ever got the RPOP system to work.
Nope. We just gave up.
Copy and understand.
We're currently waiting for Cygnus to approach the 250-meter hold. We're just about 2.5 meters away from that hold point. As Cygnus approaches, the 250-meter hold point is just one of the hold points this morning that will be right outside the Keep Out sphere, a sphere around the space station and one of the milestones designed into Cygnus's approach. Once it reaches the 250-meter hold, the teams will run a series of checks and a go-no-go poll from flight controllers before Cygnus departs, which will then lead it to the 30-meter hold point. That'll be the last milestone to make sure all the systems are a go before Cygnus gets about 10 to 12 meters from the International Space Station for capture this morning.
Station Houston on Space to Ground 2. Chris, please confirm Cygnus 250-meter hold per step 2 and 1.102.
Tune work.
As you just heard it, that was Capcom Jeanette Epps here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room calling up to the Space Station Commander, Chris Cassidy, confirming that Cygnus is now holding steady at 250 meters.
Houston Station on 2 and step 2. We do have the gray corridor. The PCS command panel matches the procedure. Frame counters incrementing. Prior range is 251. And stand by for block Bravo.
Y'all?
First initial block Bravo update. The light is within the corridor. The vehicle size matches the outline. The light is in the center of the circle, and the circle is just slightly offset to the starboard, a half of vehicle width, and forward and aft it's lined up.
We copy, and it's as expected. Thank you.
And that's in both monitors 1 and 3.
Okay, copy, 1 and 3.
Cygnus will spend about 2 months attached to the space station until mid-December and will depart the station to perform its secondary mission objectives before it disposes of several tons of trash from the station during a fiery entry 2 weeks later into the Earth's atmosphere at the end of December, wrapping up a 62-day mission. When Cygnus arrives to the station this morning, Expedition 63 Commander Chris Cassidy will capture the spacecraft backed by Yvonne Wagner. Wagner will essentially be a second set of eyes and ears on board the station this morning. Each Cygnus spacecraft is named after influential individuals in the world of spaceflight, and the Cygnus spacecraft for this space station resupply mission is dedicated to Kalpana Chawla, who is the first woman of Indian descent to fly in space. Chawla, who devoted her entire life to understanding flight dynamics, lost her life during her second spaceflight, the STS-107 mission, when the space shuttle Columbia disintegrated upon re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere.
Station Houston Space Ground 2. Cygnus has resumed approach. Your go for Cygnus PCS command checkout. Hold arm per step 3 and 1.102.
3 in work.
And you just heard Capcom Jeanette Epps confirm two teams here on the ground are ready for Cygnus to depart that 250-meter hold, and confirmation of a good readout from Chris Cassidy aboard the International Space Station.
Houston, the hold command is armed.
Station Houston, Space Ground 2, the hold arm confirmed. Your go for Cygnus TCS command checkout, disarm per step 4 and 1.102.
Go for step 4.
We have confirmation that Cygnus has left the hold, heading toward the next milestone at that 30-meter hold point, just after crossing the keep-out sphere. You'll hear Capcom Jeanette Epps continue the readouts, going through a checklist that the crew aboard the station also has, working together for these operations for capture for Northrop Grumman's Cygnus cargo vehicle to the International Space Station today.
In step 4, the hold command has been disarmed.
We copy. Station Houston, Space Ground 2, the Cygnus TCS command checkout was successful. Begin monitoring approach from 250 meters per step 5 and 1.102.
Copy, monitor in step 5.
Station Houston, Space Ground 2, Cygnus is inside the 200-meter keep-out sphere. Chris, you now have authority to issue an abort if no comm with MCCH and the light is outside the corridor.
Copy all.
And you just heard Capcom Jeanette Epps letting the crew aboard the station know that Cygnus is now inside the keep-out sphere, or the 200-meter radius around the station, giving them authority for an abort if something does go wrong with the vehicle. And a good readout from the station commander, Chris Cassidy. Taking another look at what is called the Cuckoo Workstation. It's a workstation on board the International Space Station, and this is a view from a camera pointing towards that workstation. This is the telemetry data that is being fed to the International Space Station now, where NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, backed by Yvonne Wagner, are viewing this morning and monitoring the approach of Cygnus to the International Space Station. Again, Cygnus has departed that 250-meter hold point and is on its way to the International Space Station. It's headed towards its next milestone, which is the 30-meter hold point. We'll continue to get views as Cygnus approaches the International Space Station, carrying about 7,800 pounds of vehicle hardware, crew supplies, science, and research.
Houston, we're coming through 150 meters with a block Bravo. Update, the light is within the corridor. The vehicle size still matches the outline. The light remains just slightly offset to the starboard, half a vehicle width, and the light is lined up forward and aft. This report is good for both monitor 1 and 2. 1 and 3.
Copy that, and that's as expected. Thanks, Chris.
Another live look at Cygnus as it approaches the 30-meter hold point. You can see the rate slowing down as it approaches the hold point. Cygnus is now sitting about 137 meters from the International Space Station, on its way to its next milestone, the 30-meter hold point. Once Cygnus arrives to a 30-meter hold point, the crew will have the option to turn off the orientation lights, and mission control teams in Dulles will perform state-of-health checks on the Cygnus vehicle. This 30-meter hold point is basically the stopping point to verifying everything is in the green and looks good before it makes its final approach to the International Space Station for capture.
Houston coming through 100 on the primary range. No change to the block Bravo. Everything looking nice.
Okay, we copy.
The International Space Station and Cygnus now flying in orbital nighttime. "262 statute miles above the South Pacific Ocean." Cygnus is just under 100 meters away from the International Space Station, on its way to that 30-meter hold point. This cargo resupply mission started 3 days ago when Cygnus launched atop an Antares 230-plus rocket Friday, October 2nd at 8:16 p.m. Central from Pad 0A at NASA's Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. At the time of launch, the International Space Station was flying 258 statute miles above the southern Indian Ocean. About 2.5 hours later, solar arrays were deployed and Cygnus continued its journey to the International Space Station. Cygnus is now just under 80 meters away from the International Space Station on its final trek to its arrival for capture.
Houston coming through 60 meters on the prior range. Only delta to the previous block Bravo is it's slightly converging and closing the slight starboard offset that we had on the light.
Okay, we copy. Thanks.
In the circle.
Cygnus is now just under 60 meters away from the International Space Station on its way to that 30-meter hold point, which is the next milestone. The 30-meter hold point is an important milestone because it's the final step before reaching the capture point, 10 to 12 meters away from the International Space Station. Leading teams here in Mission Control Houston is Flight Director Pooja Jazarani. She'll be leading the teams here in Mission Control. She'll be communicating and working hand in hand with Northrop Grumman's team in Dulles, Virginia. To her right is Jeanette Epps, the Capcom today. You want to hear her voice this morning as she speaks to the crew aboard the International Space Station. She'll be filtering information from the teams here in Mission Control up to the astronauts aboard the station. Visiting Vehicle Officer Thomas Castleberry will be communicating directly with Northrop Grumman's flight controllers in Dulles, Virginia, relaying vehicle status and updates back to the teams here in Mission Control, Houston. Cygnus is just under 43 meters away from the International Space Station, approaching that 30-meter hold point, which is its next milestone. Again, this resupply mission is delivering 7,758 pounds of science, research, and crew supplies.
Light remains in the corridor. Vehicle size remains the same as the outline. The light on monitor 3 is exactly in the circle. On monitor 1, it's just the light is just slight. The circle is just slightly starboard of the light, but it's all converging nicely. And the circle is about a third of the vehicle width to the starboard and converging.
And we copy all. Thanks, Chris.
This resupply mission is delivering 7,758 pounds of science, research, crew supplies, and vehicle hardware to the International Space Station this morning. Of that 7,758 pounds of cargo, there's about 2,680 pounds of science investigations. Another one of those science investigations includes the spacesuit evaporation rejection flight experiment. A team of more than 80 Johnson Space Center engineers and technicians designed and built the SURFI. While in orbit, engineers in the Spacesuit Systems branch of the Crew and Thermal Systems Division will operate an experiment by conducting 25 simulated 8-hour spacewalks, circulating water that captures heat from the system, electronics, and a metabolic simulator of an astronaut. The waste heat will be rejected through the spacesuit's water membrane evaporator into the station's vacuum exhaust system. The plan is to conduct these simulated spacewalks over the course of a year to study the long-term performance of the system, which will mirror the use of the suit when it is operated during the lunar missions envisioned for the Artemis program. Just to recap so far, Cygnus has departed the 250-meter hold point and is headed to the next milestone, which is the 30-meter hold point. We'll continue to get views of Cygnus as it approaches the International Space Station. Cygnus is just under 33 meters away from the International Space Station. Again, once Cygnus arrives at that 30-meter hold position, mission control teams in Dulles will perform state of health checks on the Cygnus vehicle. This 30-meter hold point is the stopping point to verifying that everything is in the green and looks good for Cygnus to make its final approach to the International Space Station this morning for capture.
Station Houston on Space Ground 2. Please confirm 30-meter hold and setup for capture per step 6 and 1.102.
6 and work.
You just heard from Capcom Jeanette Epps here in Mission Control Houston that Cygnus has arrived to the 30-meter hold point successfully. Again, teams are working now on running a series of checks to make sure everything looks good on the vehicle before its final approach to the station. The space station and Cygnus are currently traveling over the South Pacific Ocean, right outside of South America.
Houston in step 6, the VV mode is hold. The prior range is 30.3 and stable. The command panel matches the procedure, and we are not changing any light configuration in Bob Charlie.
We copy all, Chris.
As the series of checks continue at this 30-meter hold point, there will also be a go-no-go from the flight controllers, making sure everything on their end checks out before the final approach to the station. This is a very important milestone because the next one will be the arrival of Cygnus at the capture point, about 10 to 12 meters from the International Space Station. You can now see the robotic arm at the bottom of your screen. It is ready and in position to reach out and capture the 7,800 pounds of cargo traveling today. Cygnus is still at that 30-meter hold point, waiting to depart. You'll hear from Capcom Jeanette Epps here in Mission Control Houston today. We are currently in joint operations right now as Cygnus holds at 30 meters. Here in Mission Control Houston, teams are working from the space station side of things, while Northrop Grumman's team works in the Flight Control Center over in Dulles, Virginia. These teams are working together through the visiting vehicle officer Thomas Castleberry here in Mission Control Houston. Teams here in Mission Control Houston, teams in Dulles, Virginia, and the crew aboard the station are all ready as Cygnus holds steady at 30 meters, waiting to hear that depart waiting to depart. You can now see the robotic arm at the bottom of your screen. It is ready and in position to reach out and capture the Cygnus cargo vehicle today.
Station Houston on Space Ground 2. When you're complete with Step 3.2 in Cygnus capture, please let us know.
Go. We're briefing the Q card right now.
Copy.
We are in joint operations right now as Cygnus holds at 30 meters. Teams here in Mission Control Houston, teams in Dulles, Virginia, and the crew aboard the station are ready to depart the 30-meter hold point and proceed to the capture point. Still holding, but shortly Cygnus will be configured for the final departure and arrival to the capture point.
Houston Station in step 3.2. The crew is ready for Cygnus approach to the capture point.
We copy all. Station Houston on Space Ground 2. Cygnus is ready to proceed to the capture point. Expect approach to resume shortly.
Station copies.
Station Houston on Space Ground 2. Cygnus has resumed approach to the capture point. Monitor approach within 30 meters per step 7 in 1.102. The crew is primed to issue retreat if pry range is less than 6 meters.
Copy all, and we're monitoring in step 7.
That was Capcom Jeanette Epps here in Mission Control Houston confirming Cygnus's departure from the 30-meter hold point. NASA's Chris Cassidy, backed by cosmonaut Yvonne Wagner on board the International Space Station, going through some of these checks before departure, and they will be at the controls of the robotic arm today for capture around 4:20 a.m. Central Time. This is the final approach as Cygnus heads into the capture point. Once Cygnus is captured, there are several more steps to make sure Cygnus is ready to be berthed to the International Space Station. At the controls of the robotic arm is NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, backed by cosmonaut Yvonne Wagner. The Canadarm2 that'll be used for capture this morning is part of Canada's contribution to the International Space Station. The 57-foot-long arm was largely involved in assembly of the orbiting laboratory. Each end of the Canadarm2 features an identical hand known as the latching end effector. These pieces contain cables that tighten to ensure a strong grip. They allow the robotic arm to firmly grasp objects like we see today with the Cygnus, or it can latch itself onto the station. Once Cygnus is captured this morning, controls of the robotic arm will be handed over to robotics controllers on the ground to dock Cygnus to the station for berthing later this morning. Cygnus slowly coming into view at a rate of 0.03 meters per second, pretty slow from departure of the 30-meter hold point. Obviously designed the way to ensure it has a safe arrival to the International Space Station. Cygnus is now 20 meters and closing, looking for that capture point about 10 to 12 meters away from the International Space Station.
Probably the final Bravo update. The light is right in the center of the corridor. The vehicle exactly matches the outline. The light is in the center of the circle on both monitors 1 and 3, and the circle is smack dab in the crosshairs on both monitors 1 and 3. Everything looking great.
Copy all. Thanks, Chris.
You can see Cygnus coming into view 18 meters away and closing. Cygnus and the International Space Station are now flying 264 statute miles above the Atlantic Ocean, approaching the coast of Africa. Cygnus is now 15 meters away from the International Space Station. You can see Cygnus coming into view at the end of the space station's robotic arm. This is a view from the arm itself. We're starting to see some different components of Cygnus as it comes into view. The top right and left of your screen are the ultraflex solar arrays on Cygnus. And the circle toward the bottom of the Cygnus is where the Canadarm2 will be moving in to grapple Cygnus today.
Station Houston on Space Ground 2. Chris, please confirm capture point hold per step 8 and 1.102.
Copy step 8 and work. Houston Station step 8, the capture conditions are confirmed and the crew is ready for Cygnus capture.
Copy, Chris. Station Houston on Space Ground 2, stand by for capture. And Chris, just as a heads up, post-capture at about 9:34, we may have some blockage with respect to comms. We have no concerns, but it's just in case you want to contact us.
Okay. Actually, Jeanette, say that one more time. Didn't quite process all.
So post-capture at about 9:34, we may have some blockage with respect to comms. So in case you can't reach us, that's the reason.
Understand. Copy. Thanks.
That was confirmation Cygnus is holding at the capture point, just a little bit over 12 meters away from the International Space Station. Now that Cygnus has arrived at the capture point, teams will do a final go-no-go, which will be the final steps that all systems are go and the crew can take the controls of the Canadarm2, the robotic arm. Again at the controls of the Canadarm2 robotic arm is Commander Chris Cassidy, backed by cosmonaut Yvonne Wagner.
Station Houston Space to Ground 2. Your go for Cygnus capture sequence, step 4 and 1.110 Cygnus capture. Begin monitoring the back-away cue card.
Go for Cygnus capture, and we're on the cue card. Thank you.
That was Capcom Jeanette Epps confirming Cygnus is go for capture. All of the milestones this morning are complete. Now heading into our last step of the capture itself. In just a few more minutes, we should start to see the robotic arm moving in closer to Cygnus for an on-time capture today. Once the Canadarm2 starts moving, there will be a series of checks before capture, some readouts of the distance from the arm to the capture position over the pin. Cygnus is now in free drift configured for capture.
Houston commencing approach.
Copy.
And we have confirmation the arm is in motion. This is the final stretch for capture of the Cygnus resupply cargo spacecraft this morning. Cygnus is now 3.5 meters away. Cygnus is now 2.5 meters away. The Canadarm2 is now over the pin. The snares are now closed. Now waiting for that final stage of capture.
Houston Station, Cygnus capture is complete. Go for Cygnus post-capture reconfiguration. In the name of space exploration, all have given some, but some have given all, and it's an honor to welcome the good ship Kalpana Chawla, KC as we knew her, and welcome aboard the International Space Station, KC.
Chris, thank you for your excellent work. The Cygnus logistics spacecraft is named in honor of the extraordinary life of astronaut Kalpana Chawla, who flew on STS-87 and STS-107. We are excited for her third honorable visit to space. We welcome the SS Kalpana Chawla to the International Space Station.
And we have confirmed capture at 4:32 a.m. Central Time, 5:32 a.m. Eastern, as the International Space Station and Cygnus were flying 261 statute miles over Egypt. And you heard some words from Capcom Jeanette Epps and Chris Cassidy aboard the station, who successfully captured the Cygnus vehicle today at 4:32 a.m. Central Time, 5:32 a.m. Eastern, as the International Space Station was flying 261 statute miles over Egypt. Cygnus began its journey to the International Space Station after lifting off from the Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia on top of an Antares 230 Plus rocket on Friday, October 2nd at 8:16 p.m. Central Time. Cygnus made a 3-day journey to be captured by NASA's Chris Cassidy at the controls of the Canadarm robotic arm 2 at the controls of the Canadarm2 robotic arm, backed by Russian cosmonaut Ivan Wagner, at 4:32 a.m. Central Time today, as the International Space Station and Cygnus were flying 261 statute miles over Egypt. The Cygnus spacecraft for this space station resupply mission was dedicated to Kalpana Chawla, who was the first woman of Indian descent to fly in space. Chawla, who devoted her entire life to understanding flight dynamics, lost her life during her second spaceflight, the STS-107 mission, when the Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated upon re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. The Cygnus spacecraft was captured this morning by NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy at 4:32 a.m. Central Time, 5:32 a.m. Eastern Time, as the International Space Station and Cygnus were flying 261 statute miles over Egypt. We will be back on air here shortly around 6:30 a.m. Central Time, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time for berthing coverage, where the Kalpana Chawla will be installed to the International Space Station before that 7,800 pounds of cargo can be unloaded. And that'll wrap up our coverage for a successful capture this morning. This is Mission Control Houston.